Jesus said about lust that many people do not know. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say to you that everyone who so much as looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Matthew chapter 5 verses 27 and 28. Jesus remarks, "You have heard that it was said to those of old." Now Jesus addresses the teachings they had previously received concerning the law of adultery, the seventh commandment. Exodus chapter 20 verse 14, "You shall not commit adultery." We have here an explanation of the seventh commandment, given us by the same hand that made it the law. No one understood the law more than Jesus. Therefore, he was fittest to be the interpreter of it. Adultery is the law against uncleanness. The law restrained sinful passions, and this restrained sinful appetites. The Pharisees understood the command against adultery, but the Pharisees, in their explanations of this command, made it extend no further than the act of adultery. They did not cover that iniquity was only regarded in the heart. Whosoever looketh on a woman, not only another man's wife as some would have it, but any woman, to lust after her, has committed adultery with her in his heart. Matthew chapter 5 verse 28. James chapter 1 verse 15. Then when the illicit desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And when sin has run its course, it gives birth to death. It is a dangerous step towards sin, where lust is dwelled on and approved. It is the commission of sin. The eye is both the inlet and outlet of a great deal of wickedness of this kind. Witness Joseph's mistress. Then after a time, his master's wife looked at Joseph with desire, and she said, "Lie with me." Genesis chapter 39 verse 7. We also see this eye challenge with David. One evening, David got up from his couch and was walking on the flat roof of the king's palace. And from there, he saw a woman bathing, and she was very beautiful in appearance. 2 Samuel chapter 11 verse 2. Lastly, we see this in Samson. Judges chapter 16 verse 1. Then Samson went to Gaza and saw a prostitute there, and went in to her. We read, "The eyes full of adultery that cannot cease from sin." 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 14. They have eyes full of adultery, constantly looking for sin, enticing and luring away unstable souls. Having hearts trained in greed, they are children of a curse. Job in the Bible was a wise man, and he made a covenant with his eyes. Job chapter 31 verse 1. I have made a covenant, agreement with my eyes. How then could I gaze lustfully at a virgin? Such looks and such dalliances are so very dangerous and destructive to the soul. Matthew chapter 5 verses 29 and 30. If your right eye makes you stumble and leads you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. That is, remove yourself from the source of temptation. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand makes you stumble and leads you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. That is, remove yourself from the source of temptation. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Here Jesus uses a figure of speech and does not speak literally. Jesus makes us ponder the eternal danger of lust. Heaven and hell are at stake in what you do with your eyes and the thoughts of your imagination. We must resolve to keep the body under control and bring it into submission, to live a life of mortification and self-denial, to maintain a constant watch over our hearts, and to suppress the first rising of lust and corruption there, to avoid the occasions of sin, resist the beginnings of it, and decline the company of those who will be a snare to us, to keep out of harm's way, and to limit our use of lawful things when we find them tempting, and to seek God's grace, and to rely on it daily, to walk in the Spirit, and not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. Remember, it is not unbecoming for a minister of the gospel to preach of hell and damnation. In fact, he must do so, as Christ did. And we are unfaithful to our trust if we do not warn of the coming wrath. There are some sins from which we need to be saved with fear, particularly fleshly lusts, which are such natural brute beasts as cannot be checked, but by being frightened, cannot be kept from a forbidden tree, but by cherubim with a flaming sword. Jesus said heaven and hell are at stake in what you do with your eyes and with the thoughts of your imagination. The stakes are much higher than a lot of people can imagine. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11. Beloved, I urge you as aliens and strangers in this world to abstain from the sensual urges, those dishonorable desires that wage war against the soul. Colossians chapter 3, verse 6. Because of these sinful things, the divine wrath of God is coming on the sons of disobedience, those who fail to listen and who routinely and obstinately disregard God's precepts. Galatians chapter 5, verse 21. Envy, drunkenness, riotous behavior, and other things like these. I warn you beforehand, just as I did previously, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. When we are tempted to think it hard to deny ourselves and to crucify fleshly lusts, we ought to consider how much harder it will be to lie forever in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone. Those do not know or do not believe what hell is, that will rather venture their eternal ruin in those flames than deny themselves the gratification of a base and brutish lust. In hell, there will be torments for the body. The whole body will be cast into hell, and there will be torment in every part of it, so that if we have a care of our bodies, we shall possess them in sanctification and honor, and not in the lusts of uncleanness. Even those duties that are most unpleasant to flesh and blood are profitable for us, and our Master requires nothing from us but what he knows to be for our advantage. Jesus' most famous message, the Sermon on the Mount, focused on the hearts of his listeners. He targeted his disciples as the audience and proceeded to preach what we now call the Beatitudes. He called his men to be different, to see the world from God's perspective, to relate to people in a supernatural fashion,